Hello and welcome to today's training on Beyond Backgrounds Financial Assurance. This training is hosted by Housing Link and its program Beyond Backgrounds. My name is Josh Dye. I am your trainer today. First, what is financial assurance? Well, put simply, it is funds that encourage rental properties to make exceptions to their screening criteria and rent to somebody that they may not otherwise rent to. So rental properties have background screening on criminal background, often credit score or credit history, and eviction history or rental history. And if a renter doesn't meet that screening criteria, they're not eligible to live there. And if they apply, they will get denied and lose out on that application fee. And so Beyond Backgrounds Financial Assurance is designed as an incentive to encourage rental property owners and managers to show flexibility and make exceptions to their screening criteria and rent to people they otherwise may not to. So Beyond Backgrounds Financial Assurance works like insurance, where it's only paid out if necessary. So it's not a replacement for a security deposit. It doesn't cover application fees. It doesn't cover rent during the lease. It only is paid out at the end of the lease if necessary. So you might be wondering, Josh, why don't you just call it insurance? The attorneys told us we couldn't. So we have this fancy word called assurance instead. But if you're wondering in your head, what is it like? It's like insurance, where it's paid out at the end of the lease if necessary. So what will financial assurance cover? What kind of expenses? Well, it covers unpaid rent, damage to the unit, legal fees, other expenses. So anything that a landlord would use their security deposit to cover, financial assurance will also cover. So let's say you're an owner or manager and you rent to somebody and you charge them a security deposit. And then that lease ends and there's some unpaid rent, there's some damage to the unit or other fees. First, that owner applies the security deposit to cover that. And then if there is anything additional, Beyond Backgrounds Financial Assurance will cover that up to $2,000. So the Beyond Backgrounds Financial Assurance is up to $2,000 of coverage after the owner or manager's security deposit was already applied. So there is a cost to the renter for this financial assurance. I'll talk about when to buy it so that it's not an unnecessary expense for anyone, but it's something that if they buy it, it means housing for them. So with the financial assurance, the renter pays $300 and the landlord then gets access to up to $2,000 above what their security deposit covers at the end of the lease if there's damage to the unit, unpaid rent, legal fees, or anything else not covered by their security deposit. So now let's dig in and talk about how to explain financial assurance to landlords. So imagine you are a renter who is out searching for a place to live. You tour a property. You're interested in living there, but you know you have these issues in your background that might cause you to get denied, and you want to be able to use Beyond Backgrounds Financial Assurance as leverage or an incentive to get that owner or property manager to make an exception. How would you do it? So I like to break this conversation down into three parts. And this is something that the renters really will want to get very well practiced in sharing, because it is the best approach that we've seen to get that owner or property manager, usually an owner, we'll talk about that in a moment, to make an exception to their screening criteria and rent to them. So step one is for the renter to share what is in their background. So for example, hi, I'm interested in living here, but before I apply, I'd like to share some things that are in my background. When you check my background, you will see that I have a felony in this, or this low credit score, or an eviction during this time period, or this type of issue. When you check my background, that's what you're going to see. You want to disclose these up front, any areas where you don't meet that place's screening criteria. Now, in the state of Minnesota, if a property charges an application fee, by law, they are supposed to provide their screening criteria in writing. Now, the purpose of me telling you this isn't so that we can wag fingers at anybody not doing it, but instead it's to ask. Sometimes it's just printed on the back of the application, but before we apply and we risk $50 on an application fee or more, we want to ask, hey, can I see a copy of the screening criteria? And that way you can look and see which areas do you not meet it, so you can disclose it up front. So share what is in your background, and especially all of the areas where you don't meet that property's screening criteria. So in other words, if you have the felony in your background, you might think that's the only thing that I need to share. Well, no, you need to make sure you share the felony. And if the property checks credit score or credit history, you might need to disclose that. And depending on the property's eviction history or rental history requirements, you want to check that too. So, or disclose that as well. So step one, share. What will they see when they check your background? Step two, a pretty important step really, especially if you put yourself in the shoes of the property owner or manager, is you want to explain how things are different and better now. Why is it that what happened in the past is in the past and won't happen again? So maybe that credit score is low because they were in a relationship, or you were in a relationship and you had a bunch of joint bills. The relationship ended. You weren't able to pay those bills, but your current bills are sustainable. Or another example that I talk with renters about a lot is they have a low credit score, but they've never missed a rent payment. Well, that feels relevant here. When you check my background, you're going to see that my credit score is 525. Here's what happened. I got sick. I had to go to the hospital. I lost my job, but I had enough income to always pay my rent, and I've always paid my rent on time. I didn't pay some credit card bills. I didn't pay some other medical bills. That's why my credit score is low, but you'll see my rent payment history has always been consistent because I pay my rent first. That might make a real big difference. So explaining the context, why things are different or better now, or why whatever happened in the past is not going to happen again, is important. So we want to make sure that if you are a renter who's having this conversation, or if you're a service provider that is serving renters, that you really focus on, all right, let's talk about how things are different now and get good at explaining that in a way that will resonate with a property owner or manager. So step one, disclose what's in the background. Step two, how are things different and better now? Step three, and this is where Beyond Backgrounds financial assurance comes in. So let me start briefly from the beginning. Hi, I'm interested. I really like this place. I'm interested in applying, but before I do, I'd like to talk about some things that are in my background. When you check my background, you're going to see that I have a felony in X. Here's how things are different now. People that I was spending time with back then are no longer in my life. I've got a stable job. I've got stable relationships. I've worked with some agencies that have helped me. So I'm now in a good place moving forward. It's in the past. I take accountability and responsibility for it. Unfortunately, it was not a good place at that time, but now I'm in a good spot. And if it makes a difference in your willingness to rent to me, I can purchase Beyond Background's financial assurance. The way Beyond Background's financial assurance works is I pay $300 and you, the property, get access to up to $2,000 above what your security deposit covers at the end of the lease if there's any damage to the unit, unpaid rent, or other expenses. So if I purchased the Beyond Background's financial assurance, would you make an exception to your screening criteria and rent to me? And if the property says, yeah, that actually sounds good, I would, then you can go ahead and apply at the property, pay their application fee, as well as go online and purchase Beyond Background's financial assurance as well. That's when you buy it. So you don't want to buy Beyond Background's financial assurance up front because it may be unnecessary. There's a lot of renters who find housing just through telling their story of here's what happened in the past, here's how things are different now. But there are others who they find that the Beyond Background's financial assurance helps, but you only want to spend that money if it means that that owner will rent to you. So step one, share what's in your background. Step two, how things are different and better now. Step three, if it makes a difference in your willingness to rent to me, I can purchase Beyond Background's financial assurance. There's no cost to you, the owner or manager. Actually, I pay the $300 and then you get access to up to $2,000 above what your security deposit covers at the end of the lease. If there's any damage to the unit, unpaid rent, legal fees, or any other expenses. Now, I talk to renters every day who get referred to Beyond Backgrounds. We prefer to shift them through the website, FYI, so we don't want to be broadcasting Josh's phone number everywhere, but I talk to renters every day that have lost $50, $100, $150, $200 on application fees at a property because they apply without having this conversation up front, and then they just get denied. So we don't want to do that. We only want to apply if the landlord has said, yes, I will make an exception to my screening criteria and rent to you. Or yes, if you purchase that beyond background's financial assurance, we'll go ahead and rent to you. That's when you should have the confidence to move forward and apply. All right, I see a question that came in. Let's see if I can provide some insight. Let me read the question first silently, and then I will answer it. Oh yeah, and this is a question about like how do we get more landlords on board? We're in an area where we find that some owners are more resistant to participating in the program. What are some ways that we can do? And I will say that all landlord outreach and engagement, this is an oversimplification, but go with me here for a moment. All landlord outreach and engagement happens at the point of the housing search, especially for renters who have barriers in their background. This is not, beyond background's financial assurance is not like Section 8, where a place either accepts it or doesn't. Beyond background's financial assurance, you might see the listings on the Housing Link website where it says beyond backgrounds in their listing, but they might accept financial assurance for some things, but not others. And so in order to get more owners on board, it really is about the renter with the barriers being ready to share what's in their background. How are things different and better now? And then following through on their commitments, because with programs like this, it is on a case-by-case, person-by-person, story-by-story effort on behalf of the renter. Now, we are getting ready at Housing Link and Beyond Backgrounds to start a more broadcast awareness style campaign, just so more places are aware of it and understand how it works and that it's easy to participate. There aren't any property inspections. We make it really easy for the owner to participate, really easy as possible anyway for the renter to participate. And so, Matt, we will share those resources with you as well, just so that it's not a unfamiliar concept to owners and managers. But at the end of the day, we are not going to find hardly any owners who will just say, yeah, beyond backgrounds automatically, especially not when we're dealing with criminal background, credit score, recent eviction. They're always going to handle it on a case-by-case basis. It's been that way for the nearly 14 years that I've worked with Housing Link, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But yes, the more that we can get awareness out there of this is a program that's pretty easy to work with, pretty responsive in working with you, that can help. But it's ultimately going to come down to that individual renter. Okay, back to applying. Thank you for the great question there. Okay, only apply at the property and purchase the financial assurance if the place is willing to rent you. We mentioned that. So let's talk about what types of places we want to focus the housing search on. So you're a renter with barriers. Call it a felony in your background. Let's use that one because it's tend to be one of the more severe cases, or even a recent eviction can be a pretty severe case in terms of just a big challenge. Severe meaning a big challenge in this context. Is that what I find often where people lose out their money on application fees is they go to larger apartment buildings that are professionally managed, where you're talking to a leasing agent at the property. And what happens at places like these is you might even tell a little bit about your story, and you might share how things are different or better now. And then the leasing agent sometimes will say like, oh, okay, great. Well, go ahead and apply and we'll get back to you. And because leasing agents, their job is to get people to apply. Of course, they want people to apply who are going to get approved, but leasing agents' jobs is to represent the property and get people to fill out that application because it makes it more likely that they will fill their openings. But when it comes to a person with barriers in their background, leasing agents, no ill intent, they're just doing their job of, yeah, go ahead and apply and we'll let you know. They'll be like, oh, it'll probably be okay. And then what happens is it's not okay. The renter applies, they pay the money, they get denied, and it's not refundable. So here's an unpleasant reality. For the most part, a renter with barriers in their background is not going to want to search at places where there are leasing agents, because they already have their screening criteria and any exceptions that they will make predefined, and that leasing agent does not have the authority to make an exception to that. nor does the property manager in most cases. That goes way up corporate. So there's a little shortcut right there for you, is if there's likely a leasing agent at the property, in many cases, that's not going to be a good fit unless you see that they are familiar with Beyond Backgrounds and are willing to consider it in some cases. So if you're searching on the Housing Link website, you'll see the listing results come up. Some will say Beyond Backgrounds. That at least means that they will likely work with it for some things. And so that would be the one exception to this rule. But as a general rule of thumb, in terms of time saving and money saving, if you got a lot of barriers in your background, these larger management company owned and operated places are not going to be a good fit. So what do we do then? We focus on what a lot of folks like to call private landlords or mom and pop landlords. And if you've asked a question, I promise I will get to it. And I'll get to it after this little section here on what type of places to conduct the search. So focus on private landlords, mom and pop landlords, the kind of property where when you go tour it, you're talking to the owner, somebody who has the authority to make an exception of their screening criteria and rent to you. So these are usually small apartment buildings, duplexes, townhomes, triplexes, fourplexes, sometimes a little bit older. You get the idea. But let me give you another quick tip to better find these private mom and pop types of landlords. I'll use Housing Link as an example, but then I'll switch over to how would you implement this if you're searching Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or Zillow or any of the other platforms that you may use too. When you're searching on Housing Link, you'll get the listings, and the listing will often have an email address in it where you can contact the place. And if that email address ends in something like gmail.com, yahoo.com, AOL.com, hotmail.com, msn.com, comcast.net, etc., that's usually a pretty good sign that that's just a person you're emailing, not a big company with leasing agents, but you're going to email the person, and it's likely a private landlord who will give you that tour and is somebody who, after hearing your story, has the authority to make an exception to their screening criteria and rent to you if they are willing. So look at that email address. Now, on other platforms like Craigslist and Zillow, they're not putting that email address in the listing, but they might have a form that you fill out, or Craigslist has that kind of crazy link that you'd fill out. So in those cases, you could, if you're trying to figure out like, all right, I'm going to narrow this down, that apartment building looks a little bit older, kind of get the sense that it may not be professionally managed, I don't know for sure, send the email. And then when they reply, oftentimes you'll see what email they're replying from. And if you see that it's like, oh, they're replying from like Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, etc., well, then that's probably a good use of time to pursue. But if you see it's coming, and this is not a criticism, just for education standpoints, if you see it comes from like Dominium, then you'd be like, okay, that's probably not a good fit for me. I could ask them for their screening criteria just to see if there are any good options in there to see how this place might be a fit for me. But it may not be the highest likelihood depending on one's background. So focus on those private mom and pop landlords, pay attention to that email address. And if it looks like just someone's personal email address, those are the places that I would prioritize in searching that would be most likely to be more flexible. I'm not saying that this is an ideal world. In an ideal world, we'd be able to just talk to anybody, but I have to kind of stick to reality of how can a renter with barriers best use their time and put themselves at the lowest risk possible of losing money on application fees. Because moving forward, we don't want to lose money on application fees at all, because we're not going to apply until after we've talked to somebody who has the authority to make an exception to their screening criteria. And they told us, yes, I will make an exception to my screening criteria and rent to you. Or yes, I will rent to you if you purchase the Beyond Backgrounds financial assurance, if that's the case. So somebody's wondering if there are any, like, say, sample talking points for renters available in a handout. We don't have them in a handout. We do have them in a couple of different places, though. Let's go to one here that can walk folks through. And this works reasonably well on a phone too. You're going to see like a live edit to a presentation in real time here. See if I can do it. Let's see here. Okay, so one spot is this right here. Make that a little bit larger. Okay, you see that bbhousingcoach.card with 2 R's.co. And let me share this screen. So when you come here, you will see this chat box that pops up. I have eviction barriers. I have criminal background barriers. I have a low credit score. Questions about financial assurance. So let's say you choose I have criminal background barriers. it'll walk you through the talking points pretty similarly to how I just did it here as well. And so that's a place that you can send renters to. And then if that chatbot here does not answer their questions, they do have the option to chat with a human or for a human to get back to them after that. But that is where I would send folks. We don't currently have it in flyer form at the moment, all online. And then if somebody creates their free account on the Beyond Backgrounds website, which I have a link to coming up here shortly, they will hop on in to here where you have some very short, usually 1-minute videos on how to explain Beyond Backgrounds to landlords, how to explain your specific barriers that you may have, all within that. So that's a good reason for a renter. If you're working with anybody, anybody could set up an account on here. So even if you're a service agency professional looking to get familiar, we have these resources in here as well. Okay. I'm going to move forward here, and I will stay later to answer any questions if necessary as well. But let's go into where to buy financial assurance. So if you create your free account on the Beyond Background site that I was just in, you'll see a link in there. But maybe you're like, Josh, I don't want to mess with that. Just give me the link to buy it if I need it. Here it is right here. Okay, beyondbackgrounds.car.co/#buy/ I still like to call it the pound sign. I'm from the pound sign generation. And so we're just going to go back to the good old days in that way. But that is a direct link where a renter can purchase the financial assurance by credit card. And now let's talk about what happens after you purchase financial assurance. We'll keep this pretty simple. So let's say the renter, they talk to the place and the place says, yeah, we'll rent you, but we want you to purchase the financial assurance. Fine. So then the renter goes here and purchases their financial assurance. And right after that happens, the renter gets a confirmation email. Hey, you purchased financial assurance. We also then send an immediate confirmation email to the landlord as well that says, Jane Doe purchased financial assurance for their application at your property. So they get the confirmation that the renter purchased it. And then once the renter moves in, we do a monthly check-in by email to the owner as well as to the renter, so long as they gave us the contact information to do so. And in that monthly email, we just ask the landlord, hey, did the renter pay the rent in full this month? Are there any other things you'd like us to be aware of? It's a 2-question email. Then we ask the renter the same thing. Hey, were you able to pay the rent in full? And is there anything else you'd like us to be aware of? Now, we are very light touch in this. And so we're not case managers. We don't get deeply involved, but we will refer to resources or provide guidance as it's helpful. So for example, let's say a renter is behind on the rent and the landlord's considering an eviction. We might get on the phone and say, all right, is there an option to do a mutual termination of the tenancy instead of filing for the eviction? But that's about the extent, but it is designed to be just a light touch check-in and a place that people can keep us posted on things. And then after that, that's it. So pretty light touch approach there, but renter purchases Beyond Backgrounds financial assurance. They get a confirmation email. The owner gets a confirmation email, and then we'll check in by email on a monthly basis after that for the duration of the lease. All right, let's do a couple of fine print things before I get to your remaining questions. Looks like there are maybe 2 more questions that have come in. Fine print. So the financial assurance covers the initial term of the lease. What does that mean? So if a landlord and a renter sign a 1-month lease, not a 1-month lease, let's go with 1 year first. 1-year lease, 12 months. Beyond Backgrounds financial assurance covers 12 months. If they sign a 2-year lease, Beyond Backgrounds financial assurance will cover that 2-year lease. If they sign a month-to-month lease, the financial assurance will cover up to 1 year. After that year is over, the assurance would drop off at that point. Another common question that pops up is this just a one-time purchase or what? Yes, $300 for their lease at that property. Now, if they move out of that property and they need to go find another place to live, that other place may ask them to purchase financial assurance. In that case, they'd have to purchase it again. Also, it could happen, I haven't heard of it happening yet, but it could happen where let's say the renter signed a 1-year lease with the landlord and the financial assurance was covered there. And then let's say the landlord says, I will renew your lease, but you have to purchase financial assurance. So we have the coverage again. In that case, the renter would have to purchase it again. But otherwise, it's just the upfront $300 fee. And then that gets the landlord access to up to $2,000 above what their security deposit covers at the end of the lease. If there's any damage to the unit, unpaid rent, legal fees, or otherwise. If the landlord needs to make a claim at the end of the lease, they just let us know. We send them a link to an online form where they upload their documentation of why are they making this claim and any proof or documentation that the renter indeed was behind on the rent or pictures of damage. But it's all online, pretty slick and fast. And we usually have a checkout within 2 to 3 weeks at the latest. Okay, let's take a look at some of these other questions. And if you have any questions, scroll down below the video window, find it to the bottom right. First person asked about $300 fee good for a lifetime. Nope. It's for the lease at that property. Any other property separately. So you really want to look at it through the landlord's eyes in this case of, does the landlord require them to purchase financial assurance for their lease at the property? If so, then they would have to purchase it as many times as that happens. Okay, but I think I already answered that one. How long is a renter assured under the Beyond backgrounds? Yeah. Term of the lease. Are they required to respond to the monthly check-ins? No, definitely not. Just trying to be helpful. If there are any questions that folks may have or something they want to chat about. But again, we're more resource referral in this case. It's pretty light touch, no requirements. So that's one thing too, is this is a pretty easy to participate in. Renter can purchase it if they need it. If it means housing for them, no other eligibility requirements. Not required to engage with us on an ongoing basis. In a perfect world, the renter purchases it. Well, a perfect world, renter wouldn't have to purchase the financial assurance and the landlord would just talk to them and rent to them. But let's say in this case, let's do perfect world. If assurance is purchased, renter purchases the financial assurance, they move into housing, it goes well, and we never have to talk to each other ever again. Renter has stable housing, owner and manager has a good situation too. No requirements on that side at all. Good question. These are all good questions. I'll just say that in advance. If it covers a full year, but only covers up to $2,000 max, that still leaves the landlord hanging for a good chunk of change if they exit the lease earlier. Example, they fail at 4 months into the 12-month lease. Yeah, that's correct. So we cover up to $2,000. And if somebody is not paying their rent up front and then but let's dig into kind of the on the ground reality here for a moment as well. If a renter fails 4 months in, yes, there's still 6 months left on that lease, but they'll probably be able to rent it out to somebody else before that 6 months expires. And so, yeah, there might be a couple of months there where while they're cleaning the unit and getting it turned over and advertised again, but it's not like that unit's going to remain. In reality, those units don't remain vacant. Like, I'm just going to keep it vacant through the end of the lease. Now, they want to get money coming in again. And so, yes, you are right that they would be hanging, but the reality is, yeah, there's going to be a couple of months there, but that's why they have the deposit. Beyond backgrounds can toss in up to $2,000 beyond that. But other than that, they'll probably get it filled again. What if they purchase it and housing is not a fit 1 month or 2 months within the lease? Yeah, that's just kind of how it goes, I guess. In that case where there are no refunds for Beyond Background's financial assurance, once the purchase is made, and let me bring up something here. Share a screen. That we are really doing our best for people to know, like, you are 100% certain that so let's say you get there to make the purchase. And then we ask, did the property owner manager say they would rent to you if you buy Beyond Background's financial assurance? Yes, no, I'm not 100% sure. If you say no, then we tell them, don't move forward. If we say, I'm not 100% sure, don't move forward, confirm with the owner. And then yes, and there are no refunds. Are you ready to move forward? If you click yes, then you go through to the payment process. Now, you naturally might be thinking, well, wait a second, Josh. What if the landlord said, yes, they absolutely would rent to them? And then the renter pays, and then the landlord backs out for some reason. No refunds there. That is like the one exception that if somebody pays on the good faith of the landlord saying, yep, we heard your story. We checked your background even checked out, but we've changed our mind. In that case, we would give a refund. But other than that, we're trying to make sure like you've had the conversation, both parties are good to go as well. So, but if you're a month or two in, then the uh, let's talk about something here too, though. This is kind of a fun little exception. Is let's say the renter moves out, but there is no claim from that current property. So let's say you're 2 months in and both parties are like, this is not a good fit. So we're going to mutually terminate the tenancy, but the renter doesn't owe them any additional money. They've just agreed to end it. In that case, we would likely allow that renter to use that existing financial assurance purchase at another property, so long as there was no payout at the current one. So there is some flexibility there as well, but it has to be a clean exit on the existing property, meaning no claim or payout. But in that case, if we have that ideal scenario, then they could indeed use it at another place. They just have to let us know, and we do talk to renters through that. I should put on here, if you have any additional questions, beyondbackgrounds@housinglink.org. Do you have any other questions? If you don't have any other questions, I've presented everything I wanted to present. So for those who are tuning in of like, when are you going to wrap this thing up? I'm going to wrap it up when the questions are done. But if you've had enough, scroll down below the video window, down there to the bottom left. You can use that to log out. It'll automatically redirect you to a survey where you can share your thoughts on our time together today. And it will redirect you to register for our next training coming up at the end of March on fair housing. So get ready for that one. But if you want to hang around for the bonus time Q&A, you are more than welcome to. So somebody asks, what if they identify a new landlord in the process where they don't end up moving in? Yeah, so you should really only purchase the financial assurance with a place where you plan to move in, and there you are. But you might be saying, all right, well, Josh, what if we purchased it for this place and it just didn't move forward? You can use that financial assurance purchase at any other property that's willing to work with you with it as well. So you can use it elsewhere in that case. So there is flexibility for that, where it's like, I purchased it, end up moving it in. You can use it at another property if they're willing to rent to you. So no problem there. Good question as well. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so must have done a reasonable job today getting your questions answered. All right, thanks everybody.